What could be more brutal than betrayal in love? Perhaps it is when you give your entire life, career, and trust to the one you call your partner, only to one day realize it was all a carefully crafted trap to strip you of everything. Olivia Morgan, 32 years old, the brilliant CEO of Morgan Media, a media empire worth $200 million. Out of trust and love, she handed control to her husband, Daniel Hayes, the man who once was her sweet college romance. They lived in a luxurious mansion in New York, together with their 2-year-old son. But behind those glamorous walls, a cruel truth was waiting to surface. Daniel, 35 years old, outwardly the perfect husband, the devoted father, yet once he seized full control, he changed. His care turned into indifference, his love into deceit, and at its peak came blatant betrayal with his young secretary. Olivia was not only facing the collapse of her marriage, but a far greater tragedy. The company, the wealth, the house, even custody of her son, all of it was being stripped away. This is not just a story about divorce, but one of the most ruthless revenge stories, where honor and justice are placed on the same scale as love and betrayal. And remember, this was only the beginning. Olivia Morgan had always stood out for her intelligence, determination, and extraordinary resilience. Born into a middle-class family in New York, she quickly proved her natural talent for leadership. At just 26, Olivia founded Morgan Media, a media company that rose rapidly to become the rising star of the industry, valued at more than $200 million in just a few years. Her brilliant career, calm demeanor, and visionary mindset made Olivia a role model for many young women. Yet behind that strong exterior, she was still a woman yearning for family happiness. She married Daniel Hayes at the age of 29, after 6 years of dating since college. Daniel was steady, mature, and had been by Olivia's side in building Morgan Media from the ground up. Their wedding was praised as the perfect love story in New York's business circles. Soon after, when Olivia became pregnant, she made the decision to step back from her career, temporarily handing full control of the company to her husband. "You've always stood by me. Now it's my turn to trust you completely," Olivia said with a smile the day she signed the transfer papers. Daniel held her hand and looked at her tenderly. "I promise I'll protect the company as if I were protecting our family." For the first 3 years of marriage, life seemed flawless. Olivia became a devoted mother, dedicating all her time to raising their cheerful little boy. Their Manhattan mansion overflowed with laughter and warmth. Daniel was busy with work but still made it home most evenings, dining with his wife and son, talking about the future. Olivia truly believed she had everything: love, family, and a solid career foundation. Olivia had a special habit. Every night after her son fell asleep, she would sit in her study and write a short diary entry. She never wrote much, just a few sentences. "Today my son called me Mom for the first time." Or, "Daniel is working hard, but I feel so happy because of this family." On her desk, she kept their wedding photo and a silver fountain pen, her late mother's gift. These small details, seemingly trivial, were her connection between past and present, and a quiet source of strength. But when her son turned 2, cracks began to show. Daniel grew irritable, often using work as an excuse to stay away. Sometimes he would be gone on business trips for an entire month, leaving Olivia alone with their child. She tried to stay calm, reassuring herself, "He's just under pressure. Everything will be fine soon." Yet the oddities grew harder to ignore. Large company expenses were marked under client entertainment or project investments. But when Olivia asked, Daniel brushed her off with a cold smile. "You should rest. Don't worry about it. I'll handle everything." Olivia began recalling her mother's words. "In marriage and business, the law is your last shield. You may trust people, but paperwork and legal rules are what truly protect you." That principle, clear and sharp, stayed in her mind as suspicion began to take root. In New York, marital law was clear. Assets acquired before marriage remain with the original owner if properly documented. Proof of adultery or abuse can determine custody rights. One late night, Olivia carried her son into the backyard to lull him to sleep. City lights flickered in the distance, but her heart felt unbearably heavy. Daniel hadn't come home and his phone went unanswered. She whispered to her child, "I don't know what lies ahead, but I promise I'll protect you." At that moment, something unusual caught her attention. From the study, light spilled through the doorframe. She walked closer and pushed the door slightly open. On the desk lay a stack of documents, share transfer contracts of Morgan Media, bearing a signature identical to hers. But she knew with absolute certainty she had never signed such papers. Her body froze, hands trembling. The promises Daniel once made, the nights they shared as a family, shattered in that instant. Olivia whispered to herself, "This can't be real. But if it is, then this is only the beginning of a nightmare." She gently closed the door, clutching the wedding photo tightly to her chest, her eyes filled with fear and painful doubt. The shadow of betrayal had begun to seep into the walls of their once perfect mansion. It was a quiet weekend afternoon when Olivia Morgan had just put her 2-year-old son down for his nap. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the desk. A message from an old friend in the business world made her heart pound wildly. "Olivia, do you know Daniel is at the Plaza Hotel with his new secretary? I just saw them walk in together with my own eyes." Olivia froze. Her whole body went cold. She didn't want to believe it, but the doubts that had been gnawing at her for the past 2 years now exploded into a blazing fire. She immediately called Grace Adams, her best friend and personal lawyer, for advice. Grace's voice was calm but firm. "If you want the truth, you have to see it with your own eyes." Just hours later, Olivia and Grace were standing in front of the Plaza Hotel. Her heart pounded harder with every step toward the elevator. They stopped at room 1208. When the door opened, the sight before Olivia nearly shattered her. Daniel, her husband, the man who once promised forever, was embracing a young woman, his secretary, in a candlelit room decorated with roses and wine glasses. Olivia collapsed against the doorway, her hand trembling as it gripped the frame. Grace quickly pulled out her phone, recording a few seconds of the scene, but Olivia could only hear the sound of her own heart breaking. Daniel jumped up in panic, his face pale. "Olivia, you shouldn't be here." Olivia's voice broke into a sob. "You dared to betray me when our son is only 2 years old?" The secretary scrambled to cover herself with the blanket, but her eyes gleamed with triumph. Daniel stammered, "You misunderstood. This is just a business meeting." Olivia let out a bitter laugh, her voice rising with fury. "A business meeting in a hotel room with candles and wine?" The room fell into suffocating silence. Olivia stepped back, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't breathe, as though the entire world was collapsing on her shoulders. A few days later, still drowning in shock, Olivia stumbled upon an email in her seldom-used private inbox. Its subject line made her blood run cold. Sender, anonymous witness at securemail.com. Message: Daniel Hayes has withdrawn funds from Morgan Media multiple times under false pretenses. The total embezzled is now $8,000. He has used company funds to support his mistress. Attached is a log extracted from the internal accounting system. Attached was a file. Every withdrawal, every transaction, each linked directly to Daniel's account. Olivia sat paralyzed in front of the screen. Her throat tightened, her hands shook as she clicked through each line of data. Every expense marked as client dinner or investment project now pierced her like a knife. Everything she had trusted, everything she had handed over to him, stood there as evidence of betrayal. She slammed the phone onto the desk, clutching her head as sobs tore through her. Memories flooded back. The day she signed the papers handing the company to Daniel, the night he promised to protect the family, the first time her son called him Dad. Now she realized it was all just a facade, nothing more than a mask for his greed and deceit. Rushing upstairs, Olivia pulled out her diary from the drawer. With shaking hands, she wrote, "Today, I witnessed my husband's betrayal. Today, I discovered he stole my company and my wealth. I have lost not only love but trust, yet I cannot break down because of my son." But the nightmare deepened. That evening, Olivia's phone rang. Grace's voice was urgent, tense. "Olivia, he just filed a share transfer. If we don't stop it immediately, you'll lose every right to Morgan Media. He wants you to walk away with nothing." Olivia's breath caught. Her chest tightened as though her heart had stopped. She held her son close, tears dripping onto his soft hair. Only one thought echoed in her mind: "I'm about to lose everything." But she didn't know. This was only the beginning. Something harsher, more merciless, was waiting ahead. Olivia gripped her silver pen, the keepsake from her mother, her eyes filled with grief yet sparked with determination. She had no idea. But worse was coming. After the shock of discovering Daniel's affair and embezzlement, Olivia Morgan thought she had already reached the bottom of betrayal. But in truth, that was only the opening shot. What followed came like crashing waves, layer after layer of cruel blows, pushing her further into isolation and despair. One morning, Olivia walked into the bank to check her personal account, where she had kept most of her dividends from Morgan Media before handing control over to Daniel. When the clerk handed her the statement, Olivia froze. The account, which should have held more than $20 million, had been drained to less than $500,000. She gasped, her voice trembling. "There must be a mistake. This is my personal account, my assets before the marriage." The bank manager shook his head, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Morgan, every transaction is by authorization signature. Here's the scanned copy." Olivia's hands shook as she looked at the document. The signature looked exactly like hers, but she knew she had never signed any withdrawal forms. Her fingers clenched so tightly they turned white. That night, she sat in the cold, cavernous mansion holding her son, tears streaming endlessly down her face. She called Grace Adams immediately. Grace studied the documents, her brows furrowed. "Olivia, this is forgery, but proving it will be hard. If Daniel hired someone to replicate your signature, we'll need handwriting experts. It's a long fight." Olivia nodded, but deep down she knew. Every passing minute meant more of her fortune disappearing. Whispers began circulating among relatives. Maybe Olivia never knew how to handle money. Giving the company to Daniel was the right decision. The gossip spread like wildfire, further isolating her within her own family network. Evidence insert number 2, a printed bank statement showing millions withdrawn, each with a forged Olivia Morgan signature. A week later, Olivia's phone buzzed relentlessly with dozens of calls and messages. Headlines splashed across online tabloids. Ex-CEO Olivia Morgan caught in alleged affair, neglects family, husband, left to shoulder burden. The articles came with doctored photos of Olivia at a charity gala, digitally paired with a younger businessman. Daniel appeared on local TV, his face staged with sorrow, his voice trembling. "I've only ever tried to protect my family. Olivia has been too busy with her social circles, neglecting the company and even our son. I had no choice but to take on the responsibility." Olivia hurled her iPad across the room, her body shaking with rage and heartbreak. "How can he lie so shamelessly?" she screamed. Grace placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "The media is easy to manipulate, especially when he controls the company. Don't let anger consume you. We'll turn this around." But the damage was done. Olivia's public image collapsed overnight. Former partners refused to return her calls. Even close friends began to distance themselves. In the eyes of society, Olivia had become a faithless wife, a failed woman. Then betrayal struck from within. One of Olivia's own lawyers, someone she had privately hired, suddenly vanished along with critical evidence. When she stormed into his office, she found the files gone. Records of Daniel's secret transfers to his secretary, along with fraudulent contracts that could have proven his schemes. Frantic, she dialed his number, but instead, Daniel's cold voice came through the line. "Olivia, stop fighting me. It's already over. Even your lawyer understands that. Just sign the divorce papers and leave quietly." Her voice cracked with fury. "You bribed him? You're stealing everything from me." Daniel chuckled. "I'm only doing what needs to be done. This company belongs to someone strong, not to a weak woman who only knows how to cry." Olivia hurled the phone, collapsing onto the floor, her hands covering her face. The world had turned its back on her. With key evidence destroyed, she faced the real possibility of losing everything in court. Her friends had grown distant, her allies shaken, leaving her more alone than ever. 3 blows: financial collapse, public disgrace, and betrayal by her own legal counsel crushed her. At times, Olivia thought of surrender. A fleeting thought of ending her life even passed through her mind. But whenever she looked at her little boy's innocent face, she clung to a fragile thread of strength. Meanwhile, across town in Manhattan, Daniel and his secretary hosted a lavish party. Champagne flowed, laughter filled the air. Daniel raised his glass of red wine, smirking as he whispered to his mistress, "Just one more move, and Olivia will be out with nothing. She won't have a single card left to play." Olivia didn't hear those words. but her intuition screamed. Daniel was preparing to overreach, to strike the final blow that would leave her with nothing. That night, in the dim light of her bedroom, Olivia opened her diary again, clutching the silver pen her mother had left behind. Her heart was heavy with fear, but somewhere deep inside, a spark flickered to life. Daniel might think he was about to end the game. But Olivia whispered to herself, "If this is a chess match, I refuse to be the piece sacrificed." Daniel prepared his decisive move, but Olivia's silent vow marked the beginning of her awakening. After the chain of blows that had pushed Olivia Morgan to the edge of despair, she thought she had nothing left to lose. But the darkness wasn't finished with her. In the days that followed, a crueler truth emerged, and Olivia finally realized this was never a series of random events. It was a plan, a hidden engine carefully designed by Daniel Hayes, the man she once loved. One late afternoon, while Olivia sat quietly in the empty mansion with her son, there was a hurried knock on the door. Sarah Lee, her loyal finance officer, stood trembling with a thick stack of documents clutched in her hands. "Olivia, I found this in the internal system. At first, I thought it was just a bookkeeping error, but the deeper I looked, the more disturbing it became." Olivia flipped through the pages, her pulse racing. They were filled with share transfer agreements, stamped, notarized, and all signed Olivia Morgan. According to the papers, she had voluntarily transferred her entire 60% ownership of Morgan Media to Daniel through a web of shell companies tied to his young secretary. Her voice cracked as her hands shook violently. "No, I never signed any of this. These signatures are as fake as the bank withdrawals." Sarah nodded grimly. "Exactly. But here's the problem. These files were notarized and submitted to the New York State Business Registry. Legally, on paper, you no longer have any rights in the company." Olivia's knees buckled. From being the founding CEO, a woman once holding hundreds of millions in assets, she had been reduced to a shadow, erased from her own empire. The very next day, Daniel appeared before the media, holding the hand of his secretary. His smile was polished, his tone sugary sweet yet dripping with triumph. Olivia stepped away from the company by choice. She wanted to focus on family. All of these transfers were voluntary. "I am only carrying forward the dream we built together." Headlines exploded across major outlets. Olivia Morgan steps down, Daniel Hayes becomes official CEO of Morgan Media. Her relatives called, their voices filled with disdain. "Olivia, what have you done? How could you let Daniel take everything? Are you unwell? People say you're suffering from postpartum depression, that you've lost control." Olivia bit back tears, unable to defend herself. On paper, everything condemned her. The feeling of failure crushed her. She was cast out of her own company, doubted by her family, dismissed by society as a woman who had ruined herself. At that moment, she almost believed it was over. Then Sarah handed her another piece of evidence, an email leak between Daniel and his secretary, from Daniel Hayes to Secretary Julie Subject, complete. "If the notary accepts the bonus, everything becomes legal. Olivia will have nothing. Don't worry, once the divorce is finalized, we'll start our new life." Olivia's heart splintered as she read each line. Here it was, proof that Daniel's betrayal was not just of the heart, but a calculated theft years in the making. Clinging to her last hope, Olivia turned to her personal lawyer, the one she trusted even before Grace. But when she entered his office, her stomach dropped. The shelves were empty. The files she had entrusted, evidence of Daniel's secret transfers, fraudulent contracts, were gone. The lawyer wouldn't meet her eyes. "Olivia, I'm sorry. Daniel paid me a sum I couldn't refuse." Her voice trembled with fury. "You betrayed me, like everyone else. Do you even realize what I'm losing?" He stayed silent. Olivia walked out into the pouring New York rain, her tears mixing with the storm. For a fleeting moment, she thought of ending it all. One step off the Brooklyn Bridge could silence the pain. But then her phone lit up with the image of her little boy smiling. Olivia froze. She couldn't leave him. Not like this. Not ever. That night, Sarah returned with one more bombshell. A recorded conversation. Daniel's voice rang out cold and certain. "Julie, it's almost done. By the time the court starts, Olivia will be left with nothing. She'll walk away empty-handed. Morgan Media will be ours. The house too. Everything." Olivia sat frozen. The phrase "walk away empty-handed" echoed like a death sentence. She now understood. None of this was coincidence. It had been scripted from the moment she entrusted the company to Daniel. Did he ever love her? Or was the marriage itself just a setup for this grand theft? Late at night, Olivia sat at her old desk, the same desk where she had once signed contracts that built Morgan Media from scratch. The silver bracelet from her mother glinted under the lamplight. Her old journal lay open, filled with memories of the early days of her career. She remembered the optimism, the belief that love and trust could coexist with success. But now, that trust had been shattered, her happiness stolen, and the truth undeniable. Daniel wanted to destroy her completely. Her phone rang. Grace's steady voice cut through the silence. "Olivia, you can't give up. Under New York marital law, if you prove your assets were acquired before marriage, they're yours. And if you prove adultery or abuse, you win custody. Use the law, make it your weapon, fight back." Olivia was silent for a long moment. Finally, her lips parted. "You're right. If he used lies to destroy me, I'll use the truth to destroy him. This won't just be a divorce. This will be war." In the dim glow of the room, Olivia's eyes burned with determination. She clenched the silver bracelet in her hand, whispering, "Daniel, you think I'll leave empty-handed? Wrong. I'll show you what true justice looks like." From that moment on, Olivia was no longer the broken woman who only wept. She had seen the path ahead. Revenge, anchored in the set-up rule of law, would be her sword, and she was ready to expose every filthy game Daniel had played. Olivia had chosen her weapon, but worse was coming. The real war had only just begun. After that dark, stormy night, Olivia Morgan was no longer the fragile woman crying quietly in the corner of her mansion. She had crossed the line of despair. Now her eyes burned with determination. If Daniel Hayes had betrayed her and calculated to destroy her, then Olivia would use truth and the law to destroy him. Her plan could not rely on emotions. It demanded intelligence, patience, and cold, calculated moves like pieces on a chessboard. She remembered the words of Grace Adams, her best friend and brilliant lawyer. "If you want to win, you need a clear plan. Revenge isn't just emotion, it's logic. You must go step by step. Collect, align, gamble, edge. And remember, your enemy won't fall easily, but if you play correctly, he will fall into his own trap." Collect. Olivia's first step was to gather every shred of proof showing Daniel's betrayal and theft. At night, she worked in silence with Sarah Lee, her loyal finance officer. Sarah combed through the financial records, extracting transactions Daniel had hidden under vague excuses. "Olivia, here's a series of transfers from the company account to a personal account under Julie's name, the secretary," Sarah whispered, her hands trembling as she revealed the file. "The total is $8 million. Olivia closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, but her voice was sharp. "Keep everything. This will be the first piece of the puzzle." Beyond finances, Olivia needed evidence of the affair. She discreetly hired a private investigation team, placing cameras near the hotel Daniel and Julie frequented. The result, dozens of videos capturing them hand in hand, disappearing into rooms filled with champagne and candlelight. Inside her own mansion, Olivia planted tiny cameras in the living room and kitchen. The footage revealed Daniel yelling, smashing objects, even threatening her in front of their young son. These recordings Olivia kept hidden, her secret ace, a dagger she would only draw when the moment was right, a line. Olivia knew she couldn't face Daniel alone. He had money, power, and influence. She needed allies. The first was Grace Adams. Olivia found her, voice trembling but eyes steady. "Grace, I need you, not just as a friend but as the only lawyer I can trust." Grace nodded without hesitation. "Olivia, I've been waiting for this day. I'll defend you with everything I have. I'll prove in court those transfer contracts are forgeries." Next was Sarah Lee. Though frightened, Sarah stood by Olivia's side. "I can't watch you lose everything. I'll collect the financial evidence, and if necessary, I'll testify." Olivia gripped her hand, her voice breaking. "Thank you. They may try to threaten you, but I promise you won't fight alone." And then came an unexpected ally, Ryan Hayes, Daniel's cousin. At first, he was silent, sometimes even leaning toward Daniel, but after witnessing Daniel's extravagant parties with Julie, he wavered. Olivia met him, speaking frankly. "Ryan, I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking you to speak the truth. If you stay silent, Daniel will destroy this entire family." Ryan sighed heavily, his eyes weary. "I've stayed quiet too long. Fine, Olivia, it's time I make things right." Gamble. With evidence and allies, Olivia outlined her plan. The upcoming divorce trial would be the battlefield, but every move was risky. Grace warned, Daniel has money. He can bribe judges, witnesses, even forge new documents. If a single piece of our case falters, everything collapses. Olivia nodded. I know, but I have no way back. If I lose, I don't just lose the company or the house, I lose my son. Every night, Olivia rehearsed her testimony in the mirror. She trained herself to stay calm, to speak firmly, to look directly at her opponents. She knew the courtroom was not just about evidence. It was about perception. If she appeared weak, they would think she was unfit to be a mother. This was an all-in gamble. She was betting her reputation, her fortune, and her child's future. Edge. Olivia also knew she couldn't play all her cards at once. She needed leverage, something so powerful it would destroy Daniel the moment he thought he had won. She already had bank transfers, internal emails, hotel footage, but she kept her secret ace hidden. The video of Daniel abusing and humiliating her in the mansion, right in front of their child. Olivia never told Grace about it. She decided to unleash it only when Daniel cornered her. Whispering to her reflection in the mirror, she vowed, You think I'll leave empty-handed, but you'll forget one thing. Monsters often die by their own traps. Risks. Olivia knew the dangers. If Daniel discovered Sarah's role, she could lose her job or face retaliation. If Grace faced too much pressure, the entire case might crumble. If Ryan changed his mind at the last minute, the balance would swing back to Daniel. And the greatest risk of all, Olivia herself. If she lost her composure in court, she could lose her credibility and custody of her son. But fear no longer ruled her. Each time she looked at her child's innocent face, she grew stronger. He was her reason to fight. Then, just when everything seemed aligned, disaster struck. Sarah rushed into Olivia's house one evening, her face pale. Olivia, we're in trouble. Someone hacked into the company system. All the transaction files I stored, they're gone. Daniel knows. He moved first. Olivia froze, her heart pounding. Her carefully built plan was on the brink of collapse before it even began. Yet in her eyes, the fire still blazed. She knew this was no longer just a fight, it was war. Daniel had overreached earlier than expected. And Olivia understood. The final confrontation would be far more brutal than she had ever imagined. That morning, the sky over New York was gray. As if warning of a battle that would not only take place inside the courtroom, but also in the hearts of everyone present. The Family and Economic Court of New York was packed. Relatives, journalists, Morgan media employees, even former business partners. Everyone was waiting, because this wasn't just a divorce case, it was a war for power and honor between two people once celebrated as a love story. Olivia Morgan sat at the plaintiff's bench, her eyes steady, but her hand clutching her mother's silver bracelet, the keepsake that had carried her through this journey. Beside her was Grace Adams, her lawyer and closest friend. Behind them, Sarah Lee and Ryan Hayes quietly prepared. Across the aisle, Daniel Hayes entered with arrogant composure, dressed in an expensive suit, Julie the secretary at his side. He smiled coldly, as if convinced this would be the day Olivia collapsed for good. Grace stood first, her voice firm. Your Honor, we have undeniable proof of Mr. Daniel Hayes' infidelity, the direct cause of this marriage's collapse. She projected surveillance footage on the screen. Daniel and Julie, hand in hand, entering hotels multiple times, kissing openly in the lobby. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Julie lowered her head while Daniel clenched his fists. Olivia stared straight at him, her eyes saying what her voice did not. You thought I wouldn't know? This is just the beginning. Sarah stepped to the witness stand, her voice trembling yet resolute. I am a financial officer at Morgan Media. I have records showing Mr. Hayes transferred $8 million from company accounts into a personal account under Julie Adams's name. Grace handed over a thick envelope of bank statements. Each transfer was matched to electronic signatures forged under Olivia's name, withdrawals aligned with the dates of Daniel's so-called business trips. The room gasped. Several shareholders shook their heads in anger. The judge frowned, scribbling notes. Daniel smirked, struggling to keep his composure as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Grace pressed further. We also asked a forensic expert to examine the share transfer contracts Mr. Hayes submitted. The result: 70% of the signatures are forged using scan replication. A forensic expert stepped forward to present detailed analysis. Then Ryan Hayes, Daniel's cousin, rose and swore under oath. "I know Olivia's signature well. These are fake. I am willing to take full legal responsibility for that statement." Olivia turned to Ryan and gave a small nod. For the first time, she felt she wasn't alone. Just when it seemed the scales were tipping her way, Daniel suddenly stood, voice booming. "This is all fabricated. I have evidence proving Olivia herself is incompetent, reckless, and unfit to be a mother." He held up a folder. Bank records and internal emails supposedly showing Olivia had withdrawn millions for personal spending, and one email where she allegedly confessed to Grace, "I can't take this pressure anymore. I want to leave my child with Daniel." The courtroom exploded. Some nodded, whispering, "Maybe Olivia isn't so innocent after all." The judge leaned forward, stern eyes fixed on Olivia. "Mrs. Morgan, how do you respond to these documents?" Olivia froze. She glanced at Grace, then at Sarah. Both looked unsettled. Daniel smiled triumphantly, stepping closer to mutter, "You'll walk away with nothing. I'm more prepared than you ever imagined." For a moment, the audience thought everything was lost. Olivia inhaled deeply, then stood tall, her voice ringing with clarity. "Your Honor, these documents are forgeries, and I will prove it right here." She signaled Megan, a tech specialist Grace had quietly brought in. Megan connected her laptop to the screen, enlarging the metadata of Daniel's emails. The results appeared. Every email originated from Daniel's office IP address, all on the same day at staggered hours. Olivia continued firmly, "If I wrote those emails, why would the IP trace back to Daniel's private office? Why were they created at the exact time I was in the hospital with my son?" The courtroom erupted again. Some clapped, while the judge nodded, serious. "We will investigate further, but these strongly suggest falsification." Daniel's face went pale, though he still refused to yield. Just when the atmosphere seemed entirely in Olivia's favor, Daniel lunged to his feet, shouting, "You think you've won? I still have one last piece of evidence, something that will destroy Olivia immediately." He pulled a small USB drive from his pocket, raising it high for all to see. Julie stood behind him, smirking, eyes glinting with triumph. Olivia trembled slightly, but her hand tightened around the silver bracelet. She knew. This was the one last move, a desperate but dangerous strike from her betrayer. The entire courtroom held its breath. The judge's cold eyes locked on Daniel. Grace placed a firm hand on Olivia's shoulder and whispered, "Stay calm, this will be the final battle." And so the execution phase closed in suffocating silence, setting the stage for the explosive climax. Justice served. The New York courtroom fell into absolute silence, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock, each tick slicing through the thick tension in the air. Daniel Hayes stood in the center, holding the USB drive high with a triumphant smirk. Julie, his young secretary, stood right behind him, arms crossed with arrogance. The judge frowned and tapped the gavel lightly. "Very well, Mr. Hayes, please play your evidence." The USB was plugged into the projector. On the large screen appeared a grainy video, Olivia screaming at Daniel, throwing a glass to the floor, while their little boy sat crying in the corner. Daniel sneered coldly, "This proves Olivia is unstable and unfit to be a mother. She's violent. She's dangerous to the child." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Some muttered, "Maybe he's right, she does look out of control." The judge turned toward Olivia. "Mrs. Morgan, how do you explain this?" Daniel leaned in, whispering so only she could hear, "It's over. I planned this. You'll lose everything." For a moment, Olivia faltered, but then her eyes blazed. She straightened, her voice echoing with power. "Your Honor, that video was cut and manipulated. And now, I will show the full truth. This is the moment to reveal everything." She gave Grace a signal. The lawyer nodded and connected her laptop to the projector. On the screen appeared the metadata of the emails Daniel had submitted earlier. Tech expert Megan stepped forward. These emails were all created from Mr. Hayes's private office, not from Mrs. Morgan's devices. This is deliberate fabrication. The judge nodded, jotting notes. Some in the audience sighed, their eyes turning suspiciously toward Daniel. Sarah Lee then approached with a stack of records. "These are the internal accounting logs and spending reports. They prove that the $8 million was not withdrawn by Olivia. It was transferred by Daniel into an account under Julie's name." The screen displayed the dates, forged digital signatures, even photos of Daniel withdrawing cash at ATMs. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, "My God, he really embezzled?" Next, Megan played an audio clip. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom, deep and cold. "Keep transferring the shares. Olivia will never know. When the divorce hits, she'll walk away with nothing. Morgan Media will be ours, the house too, everything." Julie's sly voice followed. "I understand. She'll have nothing left but the child." The room froze in horror. A relative muttered, "So it was all planned from the beginning." Grace then presented a forensic report. 70% of the signatures on the transfer contracts are proven forgeries. Ryan Hayes rose, his voice booming. "I know Olivia's signature. Daniel forged them all. I testify under oath." Every eye turned to Daniel, his face drained of color, sweat dripping, but he forced a shaky laugh. "This is just a misunderstanding. All of this can be explained." Olivia stepped forward slowly, clutching her silver bracelet. Her voice rang clear. "And now, here is the final evidence, the truth that will unmask him completely." Grace inserted another USB. The screen lit up with hidden camera footage inside the Morgan mansion. Daniel appeared in a rage, screaming at Olivia, "You're worthless. Without me, you're nothing." He hurled a glass, shoved Olivia hard against the wall, then turned on his crying son. "Shut up! Stop bothering me!" The courtroom went silent. The child's sobs echoed painfully. A woman in the audience broke into tears. Dear God, he even abused the child. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order!" His eyes, cold and sharp, fixed on Daniel. "Mr. Hayes, do you have any defense?" Daniel stammered, his voice trembling. This is staged, Olivia." But he was cut off as Megan confirmed the footage's authenticity. "The file integrity has been verified, no tampering. This is real." The judge stood, his voice commanding. After reviewing all evidence, the court rules. Daniel Hayes is guilty of embezzlement, forgery, and domestic abuse. All assets, including Morgan Media and the family residence, are restored to their rightful owner, Mrs. Olivia Morgan. Custody of the child is granted solely to Mrs. Morgan. Mr. Hayes loses all rights and will face criminal investigation for embezzlement. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, angry shouts, even applause. Julie burst into tears and fled the room, abandoning Daniel frozen in place. He shouted desperately, "No, I did this for the family. I'm the one who deserves it." But no one listened. Every eye glared at him with contempt. Olivia did not cry. She stood tall, her eyes burning bright, her voice steady. "You said I would walk away with nothing. But you were wrong. I still have the truth, justice, and my son's love. That is something you will never possess." Daniel collapsed into his chair. Pale and broken, Julie vanished. The allies who once sat beside him quietly slipped away. Olivia lifted her son into her arms and walked out of the courtroom. Behind her were whispers, the echoes of a traitor's downfall. Ahead of her was the bright light outside the courthouse. She knew she had regained not only her assets, but also her dignity, her peace, and her son's future. Justice served. And so, one of the most powerful revenge stories closed in complete satisfaction. The betrayer lost everything, while the woman once broken rose, fought, and triumphed. After the decisive trial, Daniel Hayes' life plunged into a bottomless pit with no escape. The man who once stepped out of luxury cars in tailored suits, admired as a calm businessman and devoted husband, was now nothing more than a disgraced failure, plastered across every headline. New York's business world turned its back on him. Partners canceled contracts, banks refused loans, friends vanished. At the high-class parties he once frequented, his name was erased from the guest lists. Whispers, contemptuous stares, and articles branding him embezzler, adulterer, abuser became a social sentence that would never fade. Julie, the secretary he once promised a glittering future, abandoned him when she realized Daniel had nothing left but debts and a ruined reputation. Alone in a cramped rental apartment, he was left with nothing but his late regret. In contrast, Olivia Morgan stepped into her new normal. A life both peaceful and more radiant than ever. Morgan Media returned to her hands, slowly restructured and revived. The office building, once stained by betrayal, now stood as a symbol of resilience and the wisdom of a woman who dared to rise from ruins. In the Carter mansion, once echoing with arguments, warmth now filled every corner for Olivia and her son. The boy grew up in his mother's embrace, learning to believe in real love, not empty promises. Ryan Hayes, the cousin who once stayed silent, became the one redeemable soul in the story. He found the courage to testify and protect the truth when it mattered most. After the trial, Ryan came to Olivia, bowing his head in apology. "I should have spoken out earlier." Olivia smiled gently. "What matters is that you chose the truth." His redemption proved that while people can falter, there's always a chance to stand with justice. Justice had prevailed. Daniel lost everything, while Olivia reclaimed her strength, dignity, and happiness, for herself and for her son. Trust is a priceless gift, but if you betray it, the price you pay is everything. This is the bitter lesson from the story of Olivia Morgan, a woman who gave her husband her complete trust, only to receive betrayal, loss, and heartbreak in return. Yet from that very pain, she rose again, fought with resilience and intelligence, and proved that justice always has the final word. If Olivia's journey touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to the True Revenge Stories channel, and don't forget to like and share this video so more people can experience these powerful revenge stories filled with drama and raw emotion every single day. Now imagine yourself in Olivia's place. What would you do? Would you walk away in silence? Or would you stand up and fight to reclaim what's rightfully yours? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear your perspective. And remember, this journey of revenge stories doesn't end here. In the playlist linked below, countless more stories await you. Tragic betrayals, suffocating schemes, and endings so satisfying you'll feel justice served right before your eyes. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss a single episode. Justice, truth, and emotion, all of it, is waiting for you in True Revenge Stories.